It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Welcome to roster cut day in the NFL. Teams have exactly 2 hours to get down to 53 players. Titans did make one move on Monday, acquiring Panthers offensive tackle Dennis Daly, plus a 7th-round pick in 2024. They send a 5th-round pick in 2024 to Carolina. Around the league, a couple of former Titans getting released. Atlanta letting go of former Titans tight end Michael Pruitt, as well as wide receiver Cam Batson, and a couple of surprise cuts in Tampa as the Buccaneers release wide receiver Tyler Johnson and defensive back Logan Ryan. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Let's go, Blaine and Mickey. 104.5 The Zone. It is, well, it's 101 now because you were scoring at home. It is a little bit after 1 o'clock, and the Music City is cut down day for NFL teams. A lot of that news already breaking, as you heard in Lucas Panzica's update. And throughout the day, you will continue to hear names. And then by 3 o'clock today, then you will know everything officially from every team. All those lists will come out, and, there'll be 53 happy guys on every roster, and probably some happy guys to have made practice squads or to have been told by teams that they're going to make it. Maybe the most tenuous of all positions is the guy who makes the initial 53 only to be cut later when the team finds someone else. This is always a really weird day to do a show because, as somebody who does what we do, and Rhett Bryan joins Blaine and me in the studio, for somebody who does what we do, it's content, and people want to know, and people are at work, and they're wondering, is this guy going to make it, and is that guy going to make it? And Rhett, the crazy thing is, we're going to give the content, and we're going to talk about it and analyze it, but ultimately, a bunch of guys have played the last football they're ever going to play.
Yeah, I think that's the harsh reality of this. Is it's not just in Nashville; it's in the other 31 cities, and you're talking about, I think, 786 guys that will be unemployed, and a chunk of those, you're right, this may be the last football they ever play.
And I was thinking about this, Blaine. I told you before the show I was going to ask you, your experience when you were a young player, a rookie, and you'd been an 8th-round draft pick and wondering what it was like to make the team. Then later as a veteran, I said, what was it like, though, when you knew you were going to make the team and you're looking around the room after the last preseason game thinking, man, half of these guys are about to be gone. And you said, I actually got attached to some of them. I had to teach myself not to.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. I think my rookie year was so difficult, man, because everything is so fast and furious. You're not, you're so unsure. You go from really running 4th team to 2nd team, but guys got injured, and you think you're doing well, but you think, man, I don't know. And then here's the scary part, and I mean scary part of a rookie, because we're in dorms. You hear knocking on the other people's door, and so you can't sleep because you hear different guys, and you hear them say, hey, get your playbook, and you're like, oh my God, this is like 5, 6 a.m.
Yeah, this ain't David Baker saying, we're going to preserve your legacy in the Hall of Fame. This is exactly the opposite.
Now you're up and like, oh, please do not knock on my door. And then, they have you share the bathroom, so the person who was on the other side of my room, they knocked on his door. And then I was like, oh, please.
Did you hear the footsteps?
No, I heard the knock.
After the knock, is he coming to my door?
Like a horror movie.
Well, I was at the end of the hallway, so I'm thinking all I need is like 3 minutes. If he ain't knocked on my door in 3 minutes, he's going in another direction. That's all I was listening for. Do not knock on my door.
So but how hard was it to go to sleep after that?
When I never slept after that.
Good gracious.
I didn't sleep. And I was like, well, does this mean they're going to come back at a different time? Or are they just doing a separate, it still wasn't over in my mind.
That totally puts it in context.
Yeah, until and they say this is the 53. And oh, by the way, when they say this is the 53, it's still not over because they may cut you and bring somebody from another team. That got released at the last minute. They're trying to hold on to it at the last minute so people don't pick them up. So you're still on a little bit of edge. I probably have never felt where I was so out of whack than that time as a rookie. I mean, man, And all I kept telling myself is, I did everything I could. I have no regrets. And if it comes down and I don't make it, then it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And that really helped me settle down a little bit. And I had to keep telling myself that. So rookie year, you're a nervous wreck as a rookie, whether you're drafted or undrafted. I think it's a little bit easier now because especially if you're a top 3-round guy. But back in they would cut a 4th round if you didn't show up. They would boom, bye.
Titans cut one last year.
Yeah, so that was still going on then. That's why I know how they operate, and it's a business deal. Just like we were talking about Kern on the pregame show, it hurts. I said I was going to tear up, but at the end of the day, they're going to go with the younger, cheaper player if he can equal exactly what you're doing. Now, the key is with the current situation, they still can't predict if he can do it in a live game, in a real game that matters. What about when you get in the playoffs and all of a sudden you ain't had that experience and you know Kern has? And won games, by the way, I can think of the one in New England right off the bat that really sealed the deal.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, and then Logan Ryan get the pick, right? So
and that's
there's still a mechanism to you as a general manager that, we see the signs he's giving us every can, but we can't predict what he may do in a regular season or a playoff game.
And that's what the coaching staff is
Has
not
the
only
conversation
banking on,
Yes.
but hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, because the kid's going to go through some stuff at some point.
Yes, absolutely. And then as I got older as a veteran player, I had to kind of teach myself not to get too close to guys because I was always trying to help and teach them what we were doing and everything else. Especially if I saw something in you, sometimes, you don't see what's in you more than in other people. Mm-hmm. And so I was just trying to give them a glimpse of hope and light, just like I was done when I was a young player. So I really, and then you get close and you see them get cut. You're like, dang, I know they're going to bring him back on a practice squad. And then they don't bring him back.
Well, Mickey,
you
remember what Delaney Walker used to always say? He says, I don't talk to rooks because they're not going to be here.
Yeah.
I don't get used to. He would insulate himself from it. It wasn't he was trying to be cold.
Right.
He's like, if you do stuff and you stay here, I'm gonna learn your name.
I get it,
right.
But I can't study on that because I got my own thing I'm doing anyway.
Yeah. That's what I said with somebody. I saw a glimpse of hope and light that they possibly could make this team and help us. From a secondary, I want them to be up to speed because you may be around here, and I don't want it to be different when we get out there. I want to help you now before this even starts. So not just drafted guys, but guys that were potentially young guys. Like Perry Phoenix wasn't a drafted guy, and I tried to teach him. He was such a ding dong. He thought I was telling him the wrong stuff. I was like, dude,
is
why
he
would
a
I
ding dong of the week?
I was like, why would
maybe
I
of
tell
the
you the wrong
century.
thing? Then he came back and was like, oh, my bad, my apologies, man. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, but still, you thought that. Like, why would I do that? I was like, dude, I don't.
He thought you were trying to sabotage him.
Yeah, in his mind, I'm taking your job. In my mind, I'm like, well, if that happens, great for you. Guess what? I can go to another team and sign another signing bonus.
Yeah.
I win either way, bro. Yeah, see? So that's how I thought. I mean, so I didn't, but it was hilarious. There was different guys, though. But that's, I get what Delaney's talking about there, not getting too close to those guys because they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
So I would always pick one or two guys that I feel like they got something to them, whether it was undrafted or drafted, and hopefully they'd be around. Every year didn't work out the way I probably wanted, but sometimes I used to be like, well, what did I miss? I mean, this guy was a good player. And they would whop, and then nobody would pick him up. And so it made it look like it was right, even though that, you just needed a fair opportunity. Really, timing is everything. I felt like I was in the right place, right time, right scheme, system. If I would have went somewhere else, I don't even know if I would have made it, and had it, the career I had for sure. Might have potentially got to be a starter, but I don't know if I would have made all the Pro Bowls. The scheme and the system really fit my skill set, so I was very fortunate that I went to a team where I was implementing a system that it, glorified everything that I was really good at, and the things that I wasn't good at, I didn't have to really do.
It's funny you mentioned that, like go to the right place in the right scheme, because some guys go somewhere and people go, that guy's a bust. Well, maybe he was at the wrong scheme. He got drafted by the wrong team, and they tried to get him to do the wrong things. And sometimes guys get justified because they go somewhere later and they're really good, or they become great, or have a great career.
That's how it happens. They go to another team, and all of a sudden, boom. I mean, like Vrabel, you could kind of say that. Where did he start off at?
Pittsburgh.
He was a third-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
In
And then all of a sudden, he
1997.
blew up with New England.
The greatest what-if class for me in history is the Vince Young, Cutler, Leinart. What if that had worked out differently even here? Those three guys. Because Cutler wound up playing, obviously, as long as the other two combined, basically. His career was about as long as you could combine the other two. But what if what if that had worked out differently? To me, they're the greatest what if ever. Because especially in this town, and Rhett, you were covering, and Blaine, you were covering the team, so you guys remember all that well.
Yeah, definitely.
Just that was such a question because of, supposedly Mr. Adams wanted Vince Young, but was Norm Chow still here? So there was a connection to Matt Leinart. Is that right? USC?
Well, the way I always heard it is
Fishbone to USC.
Floyd Reese and Jeff and Mr. Adams all wanted a different guy.
Yes. One wanted Cutler, one wanted Leinart, one wanted Vince Young. We see who won.
Yeah. VY is my guy. That was the famous ending line. And, hey, the man that signed your check, you kind of need to do what you need to do there.
At that time, I was actually interning in the scouting department with Floyd Reese. Oh. So I got to sit in on all those meetings. It was kind of interesting. They kind of went around and asked the different people who they really wanted. It was like, uh-oh.
Blaine, why don't I remember that you did that?
Yeah. I was
that year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's my first year. And he's the uniform police now.
Yeah. So I was sitting there like, whoa, and then I was like, oh, I don't think I need to be in this meeting.
Oh, you did, because now
you
did need to be in that meeting.
I walked out. I was like, I'm not part of this, and he wasn't gonna ask me anyway. But it was kind of interesting there. What was really going on?
I want to know who Blaine would have said.
Yeah. They went around and here's where the rubber meets the road. I think you eventually had to. It felt like you had to take sides, and like, I wasn't part of the decision, but it felt like that's what it felt like. Like, and then, Bud, Mr. Adams, the Laker, Mr. Adams, he came in and he was like, I won't be wide. Texas guy was no way around it. Floyd wanted, I think, VY, and then Jeff wanted Matt Leinart.
Okay.
That Jeff wanted Matt Leinart.
Yeah.
Who did you want?
I wanted Cutler.
I wanted Cutler.
But they didn't ask me, by the way. But I look at intangibles, and it was easy because since I was new, I get to see him every week.
Right.
So it was real easy to me. And I watched, VY. VY was the more talented player. Absolutely. But I'm going to resonate with people who are kind of something like me. Vanderbilt, when you turn on the tape, Jay Cutler could run. He could make the throws all at different launch angles. And he believed he could will his team to win, even though they weren't very good. He believed it. You could tell how he played because he was a little reckless in his running. Mm-hmm. So I like people like that because if he can overcome that, then he'll be well prepared for the National Football League. VY just made everything look so easy. He was just that good. I was like, man, and then there was parts of, can he pick up the scheme and system? Can he be a pocket passer? Some of the same things they're saying about Malik Willis, who's being coached into it, and you can see him embracing that part of it. And still running at the same time. So those are the things that I kind of value a little bit more than just looking at just the actual numbers of a player. If you put it on tape and you looked at all the variables, VY was going to stand out. Matt Leinart, when we watched him on tape, at least me personally, he couldn't throw the deep comeback. And it was really kind of amazing because I thought he was an amazing player.
Right.
Especially what they were doing. And then when you watched him do NFL stuff, it was a little different. I felt like he had to be in a West Coast offense like Joe Montana or someone. He could throw deep, but it wasn't going to be the same it was in college. It wasn't going to be easy.
He was a system quarterback.
Right. That's exactly it. And so I really didn't like being a young in the scouting, just an intern. In my mind, I was like, well, I wasn't saying system because I felt like system was a negative term.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like saying he's a game manager.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But that's really what he was. So I thought he could, and I thought he'd be better than he turned out, though. I thought, man, he can good, but in the right scheme, he could be really good. And so those are the things you got to all put together when you're drafting players, especially at that position and how they fit in with it. And you have to have the backing of the coaching staff to be patient, and let them develop. So all those variables, man, it's tough. That's why you can go wrong on your picks and on the quarterbacks in the draft.
I'm still laughing at you. You're sitting there going, I don't think I need to be in this meeting. I'm just picturing you
there and listen to all of
going,
it.
No, they were going around and
wall.
asking like scouts and people who they liked. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's when you give your report, your thumbnail on the
Uh-oh. Dang.
It's evaluation time.
Yeah, but lucky for me, I had to give no evaluation.
You just gave it.
I just
After all these years.
I said, I go tinkle.
All right, Rhett Bryan. deadline is in. Let's talk some Titans. Not a lot of roster cut news. A name I saw Terry McCormick and others had this. Trey Swilling, a defensive back, was cut earlier today. We'll get into some potential cuts. We'll get into some other stuff, including we're talking about this in a green room. A certain Titans player that I think, and I'll ask these guys, may have made himself impossible to cut. We'll get into that next, right here on Blaine and Mickey. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Rhett Bryan hanging out in the studio, the executive producer of Titans Radio. By 3 o'clock our time today, we should know every team's roster cuts. The Titans seem to have a propensity to wait until right at about 3 o'clock to announce these things. So Blaine and I seldom get to announce
And that's why I'm like, man, that ain't fair to you. Like, can we move this to like 2 Central so you guys can get some scoopage here?
Seriously.
They're
I'm
really
rooting
thinking
for
about
you.
us,
I mean, what the heck,
right there,
man?
trying to do cuts. But through your past times covering the Titans all these years, typically, what are the guys really feeling over there, whether, you're getting cut or not, and what is the organization thinking at the same time, to cover them from afar, but yet part of the organization?
Well, you kind of touched on it last segment, Blaine, that there's kind of 3 waves of this. There's the get down to 53 today, and then you've got the wave of, I'm going to say 4 to 5 spots possibly that John Robinson may pick up that's being cut somewhere else. Because like I said, 786 players are out of a job this afternoon. Wow. Some of them are going to get other jobs. And then there's that, the third wave is after week 1, where you're not on the hook for a guy's salary for the entire season. Whoever's on the roster week 1, you're on the hook for their salary. So if you pick a veteran up in week 2 that's still floating out there, it's a week-to-week proposition, and it won't hurt you cap-wise. So you got 3 phases of this, basically. And, I'd say they pretty much know exactly where they are and who is on that cut list. And
I know they've changed so many things, like with the practice squad. Take us through, like, how many there are, and then what's the salaries and how that all works.
So the great thing that was a byproduct of the pandemic is that they kept the same kinds of rules for the practice squad. And so you got 16 instead of 10, like it's been the last 2 years. And 6 of those 10 can be veteran players that have no, practice squad experience left or time left.
So they could be 8 years in the league.
Yeah. If you'll remember, the Texans in the COVID year, the Texans had Josh McCown on their practice squad as an emergency quarterback, and he's 40 years old.
Yep.
And had played a ton in the league.
They were thinking about hiring him as a head coach.
Right.
So
there's that, and then there's guys that you can protect out of some of those every week. And we were doing the math. I read you the numbers of what a guy makes on the practice squad now, and man, it ain't no chump change. I mean, it's good stuff.
Well, I could say that's what I made my first 2 years. What a practice squad player can make now in a 5-month window, if they're at the elite of the high scale of that. That covers my first 2 years of what I made as a veteran that started in the NFL.
So $11,500 a week.
The economy changed.
That's $11,500 a week on the practice squad. Veterans on the practice squad, $15,400 a week minimum, $19,900 max. And also with that, I do understand. I believe that of the veterans on the practice squad, John Robinson can actually negotiate a deal under those parameters. He can negotiate a contract with that particular practice squad person. If it's a veteran, say it's, an emergency quarterback or whatever.
Didn't one year under the old rules, didn't they pay Alex Taney a full NFL salary to keep him on the? Do you remember that one particular year?
Because somebody offered him or something. It was the Giants. It was somebody.
It was before he went to the Giants, and it might have been the Giants. But yes, that did happen.
His salary boosted up. I was like, dang, for a practice squad player.
They paid him a full NFL salary when you're on the practice squad to keep him around.
Yeah,
trick shot,
man. He trick shot his way to a nice long career.
I like Danny, man.
I did
That's
too.
Pretty cool, man.
Rhett Bryan hanging out with Blaine and me. We were talking about this, and there really aren't a whole lot of news about Titans cuts. The only one today, again, I saw Terry McCormick, but I think others reported it too. Trey Swilling, the defensive back, released. Of course, Brett Kern, who we talked about yesterday, Kyrie Gillespie, a couple of offensive linemen.
Yep, Hayden Howerton from SMU. That's right.
There was one other DB who was released yesterday, correct? Gillespie and one other guy. Was it Colbert? No.
Yes.
Was it Colbert?
Yes, it was Colbert.
Okay,
right.
so Colbert got released yesterday as well. I was thinking that. We were talking about this in the green room, and yesterday we were at the Zone Summer Golf Tournament. Appreciate everybody who sponsored and took part in that. That was a whole lot of fun. But I never brought this up, and he didn't get cut yesterday. It didn't get leaked out anywhere. You always try to look at, okay, do they keep a 6th receiver, or maybe do they keep a 6th cornerback? Because on special teams, maybe those guys would do sort of the same stuff. So they would be similar in what their Sunday jobs would be if they were active. They'd be more special teamers. And I thought the whole camp that, okay, it's just going to be the 2 top outside linebackers, the guys that are making all the money, Landry and Bud Dupree. And then Ola Daney's a nice special teams player and big energy when he gets in there. And Rashad Weaver, I think, is going to be somebody that's going to be a problem for people because he looks like just a problem. He's big and long and runs and pursues.
And he's hungry.
Mm-hmm.
But David Anini seems to me like you would be in the room and you would say, how could we cut this guy? Joe Jones has kind of seemed like that guy, depth, inside linebacker. But Anini seems to me like maybe a team that went into camp thinking, we're only going to keep 4 outside linebackers. Boy, this guy showed up every week. And he's always around the quarterback and he's always around the ball. I think he made himself hard to cut.
It's going to be interesting.
I still say that he is a practice squad guy. That's what I believe he's going. I have nothing to base that on whatsoever. And I'm rooting like heck for the guy because I got to kind of talk to him a couple of practices and did a feature on him
I remember
a couple of weeks ago. And a great young man. And, it's a common story now because of a couple of the defensive guys that I put in the preseason and feature, Sam Okawanu and him both. They're both from Africa or have African heritage, Liberia and Nigeria. And they're soccer kids. That's soccer rules the world, man. And so they didn't get really turned on to football till later on. And, David Anini, he didn't really play football till his junior year in high school. And really started.
Wasn't I standing there that day when you asked him that, and he said the coach just kept harassing me?
Yeah.
And finally, I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try."
Sure.
And he was a junior in high school.
And the thing is the soccer stuff has, taught them the linear quickness that you're looking for out of that position. And he played, 4-3 to start out at University of Houston, and then Dana Holgerson was hired there. And he's played 3-4, I think, his last 3 years. But the production is there, to your point. He has 4 straight seasons at Houston where he had either 4 or 4.5 sacks every year, minimum. And I think he had 21 overall. But great young man and seems to be around the ball, has a knack for it. But I think because he is unpolished but is a prospect worthy to take on. I think if you can get him through waivers, I think you'd certainly put him on the practice squad. But hey, just as I say that, he may make the 53 this afternoon, and I hope so for his case because I like that young man.
I want to ask both of you guys this. Oh, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that typically a guy like that you think is going to make the roster, but they always take a risk. And that there's not a fit right now for a spot for him, depending on what the other roster moves are. So that what will determine if he's on the roster or if they take a chance in cutting him and getting through waivers. As you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of players getting cut, and hopefully he gets lost in the shuffle unless their scouting department is really honed in and been watching him because he was a highly coveted player coming out as far as an undrafted player. There he had other offers. So they're going to go back to that, just like the Titans are, and looking at players that they wanted to bring into camp that they lost out on, and really are paying attention to those kind of guys.
I mean, this guy was at the combine,
right? So this is going to be a risky one. I don't know. But where do you go? You may gotta go to another position. Where is that position? Because they're all so deep in other positions.
And Blaine, you're right.
Hard to do.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah,
it depends on what they do and what they keep at each position group. Like I'm looking at the wide receivers. And I'm going, man, if they keep 5, I think Des Fitzpatrick might be out. Because, it's Robert Woods, it's Traylon Burks, it's Kyle Phillips, it's Nick Westbrook-Akine, and I think it's Racey McMath.
Yeah.
Because Racey can play special teams just like Phillips can. It's the more you can do, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a potential that, you have a 4th rounder again getting released from the team. And to your point about the defensive line, that's where the wealth of riches is.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought DeMarcus Walker in because he is good in the run and the pass, whereas Tierre Tart and I forget who the other guy. Yeah, and Naquan are one's good at one and one's good at the other, and this guy's kind of a utility guy. And that's where I think Laurel Murchison may be the guy, who might be the odd man out this afternoon.
Yeah.
And,
What was the
again,
draft pick? What was he, 5th round? What round was
he was third round
Third?
out of NC State.
Third? Wow.
No, he might have been 5th round.
No, I think he was 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, oh man, but still, and he didn't stand out even last year, but he hasn't stood out this preseason either. Did he get one sack? I might have saw him or tackle for loss or something. It's the only time I noticed him on the field. So you can't do that when you're drafting. You got to show up. So him and Dez,
you're right, 5th round. Sorry,
yeah, 5th
my
round.
apologies.
Yeah, I think him and Dez are definitely, you're also trying to say, okay, I may potentially bring him back on the practice squad if you do, because did they do anything for other teams to notice them? Like, did they do anything that stood out?
And that's what your concern is about David Aneni. If you release him,
Like,
he's got some stuff on film.
And people are, ooh, man, this guy, hey, we can do for a pass. All we'd say, just go.
And to your point about Rashad Weaver, that's a 4th round pick that,
man,
they won.
There's people going, oh man, we might should have done something different with that last year.
He is strong, long arms, long legs.
When Coach Vrabel calls you relentless, he isn't one that doles out praise. When he calls you relentless, and I'm telling you, that guy is dialed in. He told me the second day at camp, he goes, man, everybody thinks I had a great preseason last year. He said, yeah, I made some plays on. He said, it was garbage. I didn't know what I was doing. He said, I just kept watching film, and he said, obviously I had a lot of time after the leg break, but he said, I just kept studying. And he said, I refused to accept that was anything good last year. He said, that was nothing.
That is the right mindset that you want a player to have, let alone a young player. Wow, that's impressive.
Tight end. Do you think there's a chance, Rhett? You asked the question about the 6th wide receiver. Let's say they keep five wide receivers. Could you guys see them keeping 4 tight ends and using, obviously, the extra tight end in the block?
Well, who's the 4th tight end, you think?
Yeah, that's my question.
Somebody
to
who's
you.
not here.
Oh, okay. No,
they go beat somebody in from another place.
OJ Howard? No. I don't know. I'm wondering what's going on. Do they know something we don't? I don't know. But does he fit what's missing here? I don't know.
But Blaine's right. That was my immediate question is who's 4? Because it's Austin Hooper, it's Chigo Okonkwo, it's Jeff Swain. And I know those 3 are there, but is 4 somewhere else? Do they keep 4?
I've seen some people kind of estimate maybe it's Tommy Hudson. I know he's had trouble staying healthy. Seems like obviously they like him because they've kept him around for however long.
Or is it Blaine's theory about Torrey Carter? And Torrey Carter is a cut because he didn't put some great film out, and they go and find a street tight end who can be that H-back
and then
type
they
person.
Can put him on the practice squad and say, when we go smash mouth and we think we're going to run the ball a little bit more, and we'll elevate him up because he is a great special teamer. But
he
dropped the ball on a pass in the flat, and then he missed a block. It was a straight on with Haskins, and the guy made the play.
And
Vrabel lost it on the sideline. That was clear as day. I was watching.
Here's the other thing when we're talking numbers is someone called the Mike Vrabel show last night and asked, is there an offensive lineman that is a Undertaker type who is a giant tight end in the jumbo package when they do red zone stuff?
Great point.
Is there that? And he was like, yeah, my hope is that one of these guys will be that.
Remember, Undertaker started like 9 games at tight end one year. He was the starter as that extra package.
So, look, and we know how important the tight end position is to what they do in this. They want you to block. They want you to get it open. They want you to make a catch, just like they want the receivers to do the same thing.
Well, and with your offensive line maybe not being just up to the level that you would hope and pray that it was, maybe an extra tight end just gives you more chip-in options and more blocking options and just more options.
And that may be your answer there as to whether they keep a 4th tight end or not, because Nicholas Petit-Frere has won this job at right tackle, but he's about to have a real education at right tackle, and he's going to need some help from time to time. Yeah. Is he not, Blaine Bishop?
Oh, man, I feel for him because I don't know if he realizes, at the time when you're a rookie, what's about to hit you in the speed of the game and what it's about to be like. Nothing like preseason. So, what I do like, though, I like his mannerisms and how he goes about his business. And he talks about you still working every week to win that starting job, but it's not over yet. So I love all those things. I think potentially he can be the guy. He's going to have some ups and downs, but I think he's going to have less than most, considering the circumstance.
Oh, listen,
And
I don't have any idea. I don't have any doubts about what he'll be able to do.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
he's
there's
run
going to be a
blocking
learning
curve.
process in this. The guy is super smart. I mean, super smart. And so I know just based on what I'm hearing him say and what I hear his coaches say, is he will put in the work to make sure that the hands and the feet are right and that his mechanics are right, his technique is right, so that he can have the best, weapons at his disposal and have violent hands to shock and shed the blocking.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to say about, every player
Or the
is so
defender.
unique and different. As we're talking about Petit Frere and how super smart he is, sometimes the people who are super smart at other positions outside of quarterback, they aren't quick thinkers. So you can't you use that term as loosely as people. Just because you're smart don't mean you'll be a smart football player. And just because you're not a smart football player don't mean you're smart outside of football. So it really kind of hones in when you get the guy that kind of has both of those, which he does. I think is really unique because the reason why I bring that up, everybody kept on saying Dylan Radins overthinks, and most smart people do that in sports. They overthink. They're thinking too much about what they're doing and how to do it and how to process it, and then all of a sudden they're not doing it at the speed off of reaction. So I've played with a number of players. I remember I used to say this to Renee Stewart, who was super smart, who was my backup. I just said, hey, man, you're overthinking. You're thinking too much. And the guy was bright. And I was like, just relax and just go play ball and use your instincts after you know what to do and then put it all together.
Use your muscle memory
Right.
and then put it together.
Yeah. So some
Apply it.
players can't do it, though, or it takes them a little bit longer to do, as I feel like the coaches were talking as though that was Dylan Radins last year. Oh, he's super smart, but he's overthinking. He's thinking too much. Where Petit Frere has already figured that out. He's a sharp guy. He did it in college, I'm sure. And then he was playing multiple positions. It didn't matter if he was putting his left hand, right hand down. It didn't matter. And that is tough to do.
And Coach Vrabel's been working with him one-on-one. He said, man, this guy's the smartest coach I've ever had that knows every position groups, key and diagnose their technique, their fundamentals, the whole thing. He said, he's made me better just working with me one-on-one as him being a former defender in the league.
Got one more segment coming in this hour. Rhett, could you come back and do one more?
Let's do it.
I want to ask both of you guys, because they're about to cut people and they're about to have 53 people on the team. What position do you feel the best about? What position do you feel the worst about as we're about to embark on the first week of the regular season? You want to weigh in on any of this? Zone TV chat is wide open at Blaine and Mickey on Twitter. Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, 615-737-1045. Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. This might be the craziest story of the day so far, roster cut wise. There's always something weird. Like last week, team didn't have a punter briefly. I can't remember who it was, but
And Garoppolo got his deal redone and is the highest priced backup in maybe NFL history.
after basically being told, don't come around here no more, getting Tom Petty
No more.
all summer long, and now he's re-signed and back there. Craziest story. Dallas Cowboys only have one quarterback on their roster. They cut all the other quarterbacks.
And you know who he is. His name is Dak Prescott.
He has no backup right now.
Who was out there? Oh, no. Oh, it just hit me. I saw it on Twitter. Kellen Mond, Texas guy. Texas A&M.
He's extremely available. Just put in the waiver
Got
claim.
cut by the Vikings.
He's the
And he had
third-round pick.
And he had a 2-touchdown passing game, a week ago?
Yeah. Oh,
So-
well, here that GM and coach did not draft him.
Yep.
And they traded for your man from 49ers, Mullins.
Nick Mullins.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned this. Alex Leatherwood, the former first-round pick of the Raiders, has been released.
Dang.
And I'm telling you, there's some
kick your
picks in
tires
that
on
Mike Mayock regime that, woo. Yeah, because Ian Rappaport right here is reporting they tried to trade him to everyone, got 32 no's.
Uh-oh.
So,
Wow. Like a condition. I wish we knew, like, they're going to say, well, we'll give you
What
a
are the
conditional sixth rounder or something. They say, no, he was a first rounder. We're going 4 or 5. And then, well, no.
pass.
Just wait for him to get
El Paso, the Texas condition, sir. Thank you.
I don't know, man. He's still a young player. I haven't watched a lot of tape about offensive linemen.
If you can get him, I would kick the
roll
tires.
dice,
I
wouldn't
would
it?
kick the
In
tires
worst case
on him.
scenario, he's a guard, right? Then we just loaded a guard.
Which brings me to my next question. What
Okay.
position group do you guys feel the most nervous about right now? And maybe it has something to do with the position group that Alex Leatherwood would occupy.
If
Where
I'm
he-
answering this honestly, it is the offensive line because they're replacing 2 starters, one at left guard, one at right tackle. And, and Taylor Lewan's not getting any younger, and neither is Ben Jones. So, yeah, I mean, that's the first place I'd go.
Man, it's hard not to go with the lineman, but just since you did, I will go. Wow, I'm gonna go. I'm a little still nervous about the wide receivers, the back end of the wide receivers, and I know they've exceeded expectations, but I got to see them in a game.
Yeah.
I got to see them in live action. Like now, NWI, you are the 2. You not. Some people got you on tape. They watching you. And we saw you in the playoff game, and where everybody could talk about Tannehill's throw. But what about how he ran the route? Yeah, and I like him. But being the 2 is different than being the 3 or the 4 guy, and then nobody's paying attention, and they were not really scouting. So I'm interested to see if he step up. I think he can, but it'll be interesting. Will he impact the game? So I want to see Burks become what he should become sooner than later. I think we got to be patient because of the limited amount of time. He was missing practice here or there in games, but I think he is the linchpin that has to rise eventually as time goes on and becomes a threat in some form or fashion. And I'm not talking about dominate a game. I'm talking about one catch here or there. Maybe you make a one-handed grab. Maybe you catch a deep ball. Maybe you catch a crossing route, break some tackles in one game at a time on all of those and do something that impacts the team. I just don't know if we have any game changers, and that's what we're looking for at the receiver position. NWI, we can go back and look at all his history. There was no, impactful game-changing plays. Moving the chains type plays, yes. Robert Woods moving the chains, yes. Kyle Phillips, I think, moving the chains, yes. Maybe as a punt returner, he can impact more so than not. So I'm interested to see what Burks does, and I think that's why I'm probably picking them. I really want to go O-lineman, but Burks has to rise and start impacting his team even when he's not even getting the ball.
Could I ask you guys this? Mike Vrabel got asked about this literally in the preseason. Hey, man, have you guys thought about trying to scheme some stuff up for Burks? He goes, I'm paraphrasing, but Vrabel was like, we're not going to do that for anybody in the preseason. We're not scheming up anything for one person. When the season starts, though, would you be like, hey, big fella, we're going to throw you 2 bubble screens. We're going to run you on a jet sweep. We're going to throw you some. Would you go into a game knowing there's going to be 3, 4, 5 times where you literally manufacture a way to just put the ball in his hands to try to get him going? Would you do that? I mean, first round draft pick, big physical guy, great tools.
Well, if you've noticed during camp, a lot of his snaps came at the X position just to get his feet wet. I think you'll see more of that as you go along. But, hey, here's the thing, and to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Blaine, about concern about the back end of this group. If it starts clicking and working, though, good gracious. I mean, think about you wouldn't see this personnel grouping very much because they run the ball, but let's say they went 10 personnel and went 4 wides.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Woods, 6 foot tall. Racy McMath, 6'3". Nick Westbrook-Akine, 6'2". Traylon Burks, 6'2". You got some trees out there to throw to.
Yeah, they got a type.
They got a type. And the thing about Kyle Phillips, I think he's going to be just fine and dandy, but I worry about his durability because he's a small dude.
Mm-hmm. No, all those are valid. And I think the reason why I'm going receivers here, I'm also concerned with the line to the point that they also have to protect him so Tannehill can be accurate on his throws.
Yep.
One thing about this interesting to me about the wide receivers, and you talk about their size, I liked playing against tall receivers because they were easier to read and route run. It takes a lot more for a guy to sit down. You can read his arms. So that's why I like going against 3 or 4 different style of receivers. I don't want them here, and there, and they're all different. Then it's hard to kind of hone in on the style that they like to run routes. So there's certain parts of being a big receiver now. If you're talking about jump ball, then naturally they do have an advantage. But if we're talking about just pure route running, and that's what you're in this league for, the better route runners end up playing a long time. I think if you're not as polished, and I think that's what Moore does a great job with these tall guys because he was a tall receiver, by the way, and I played against him when I was a young player. He was at the end of his career, and he was exceptional. Underrated, by the way, too. I think he was just as good as Michael Irvin. I'm going to put that out there, and people can marinate on that. He just wasn't on a Super Bowl caliber team. But he was the same style of player and actually a better route runner than Michael Irvin.
And Blaine, to your point about the other guy who was not like the others, Kyle Phillips. Very good route runner.
Right, excellent. Right,
lower
excellent.
Center of gravity, can squat and get to his points, and short area quickness off the charts.
Well, I really like this. This is what the Buccaneers, when we scrimmaged them, they were having issues with Woods, Phillips, and Kinsey because guess what? They had no problem with the tall guys. They had no issue. Guess why? All their corners were 6'1", 2, and 3, and long arms. So they were right there with him, and they're not going to win jump balls. But the guys that was really giving him issues, and Logan Ryan could guard him. Winfield was, he did halfway decent, but that's really not his job. So it was kind of interesting that they weren't even prepared for different style of receivers being DBs. See, they were only preparing for the tall guy. See, so you got to be able to approach it from each perspective on the offensive receivers and then the defensive backs where you can match up. That's why you look at our team, we got the Jitterbug, we got the Molden, we got the Ugo. They can match up with the small Jitterbuggy guy. And then we got the tall guy, Bolton, Farley, and then McCrary. With the short arms, right? We should see how those short arms are playing out, right? They just long enough.
I'm excited to see him. And I'm excited to see Caleb Farley, too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see hour number 2 of this show, and that's coming up next. At Rhett B. Tennessee on Twitter, you can follow him there, including a very cool observation about Malik Willis in a recent tweet. First guy out every day. You can get all kinds of insights from Rhett. You just have to follow him. Also, keep up with Titans Radio on Twitter as well. That's probably a lot of Rhett B's handiwork.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit of that, too. Thank you, sir.
All right, gentlemen.
Woosah.
Hour number 2 coming up. It is cut day. We don't have a whole lot of Titans news, but ex-Titans news, we have it out the yin-yang, and we'll share some of that with you next.
Oh.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Woo! Tuesday, August 30th. You know what that day is in the NFL? It is cut day. It is doomsday for a lot of people. So we'll tell you what we know as the hour goes on. Everybody's cuts have to be made official by 3 o'clock our time. I would imagine typically the way the Titans do business, it's 257, 258, 259. So whatever happens through each, y'all will have you covered for the rest of the day with all that stuff. I was thinking about this morning, Blaine. You know, for us, I mean, you played, so you experienced all of this stuff, everything that we talk about NFL-wise.
Right?
There's nothing that you can ever say, no, it never happened to me, because you got to deal with all of it at some point in your career. But the weirdest thing about this is, and I mean, for instance, like your son played high school football and now he plays college football, and you played high school football and college football. Now, my daughter's no interest in sports. She's in high school, but my son is 7 and he loves sports. So he's playing flag football now and baseball and everything else. So for families, and you see your kids play sports, maybe they play when they're little and they go, I'm going to play in middle school. That's awesome. Well, then they say, I'm going to play in high school. Maybe they play in high school and they're good. And maybe they're one of the, oh gosh, I even read the percentage. It's so small, of people who play then in college, in any sport, but we're talking about football today.
Mm-hmm.
And then like some of those people actually then go and get drafted, or they get a free agent tryout or whatever. But by the time you would finish all this, I mean, you would have been pursuing this dream. Some people start playing football when they're in first, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, whatever it is. I mean, David Anini, we were talking about him, the Titans player, grew up playing soccer. So he was chasing a sports dream, and he switched to football as a junior in high school. He's such an interesting guy, and we'll be keeping an eye out for him today, certainly to see if he winds up on the Titans 53. But I would imagine, and you had to experience the end of a long football career that you spent your whole life pursuing. I would imagine for a lot of these guys who don't get to play anymore, maybe they're a veteran and they finish their first year, third or fourth, fifth, and they get cut and the phone doesn't ring anymore. Do you kind of mourn? Do you mourn that? Like, you spent your whole life doing this. And even if your body's beat up, even if you're tired, if you're whatever, then you just can't do it anymore.
Well, I probably have a different perspective than most athletes. I think where the confusion starts for most athletes is they think that's who they are and not what they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it starts. So, and most of the time it's all the guys who have been, coddled and been first, second round, and everybody's always told them how great they are. For me, it was something that I just did, and it's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that has to do with my background and makeup of where I went to school, Ball State, not a big program, dreaming, always thinking I'd have a shot at the league, but never really thinking I would.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, it was a little easier transitioning and always thinking about that as time went on. And when I give an example of that, my first year in the league, I was an intern for Smith Barney. My first year in the league. Yeah, in the off seasons, Smith Barney. So there still was something in me that was saying, hey, either I'm going to continue this on for a long time and I'm going to have a little insight on managing money, or the vice versa is this is over and I'm already preparing for my next job. So my perspective is a little different than most who play. So I was a big proponent of that, and it all started when I was a young kid. My mom always told me that, and I mean, it was, because I was real big in sports, and it wasn't just football. I played basketball, track, everything, what I mean, chess, karate. I'm big in swimming, big speed. That's my main background was swimming and football. So I didn't ever play soccer, by the way, which I believe is the first sport you should get all your kids in. And that's what I did with my son.
My town in Arkansas was so small, we didn't have soccer.
Right, and probably didn't either where I was growing up and everything else. But she always told me your mind can take you further than anything in this world. And she said it routinely. So her deal was you make the honor roll, then you can play sports. Didn't matter what sport it was. So that continued throughout my whole entire life. Even when I laugh and talk about, I made the honor roll, but I made high honor roll, when I was at college. So that still stuck with me in the discipline that it takes to do those things. Most players probably weren't thinking like that. Mm-hmm. So I can't say that my experience was the same for most. When I was finished, everybody, people ask me this still today all the time. Do you miss it? And I go, no, I don't miss it. I gave it all I had, all I got, every little bit of soul that I have an inkling into the game when I was playing it. Everything, every little edge, studying 6 a.m. to 6 at night, even during the season, off season. I did everything I could to be the best. And so when it was time, I'm going, nope. Because I could still go 2 or 3 more years at some minimum salary, as we're talking about. And I go, nah, I want to be able to play with my kid. I want to have my faculties all together. Yeah. And I was already starting my broadcasting career, interning, as y'all mentioned. I interned with Floyd Reese. Then I went and then worked with Hope Hines. Then I worked with Plaster. I went down a list on all these guys I was working with, right, throughout the time I was playing. See, so I was already thinking like that. Most players don't think like that. So I can't say for me personally, it was not. I was ready to go and ready to move forward on to what I wanted to pursue, the other life, and that is the real world life of being, NFL, former NFL player. Now you try to leverage that and let that then harness what you want to go into, can just start, in something that you don't have any.
This is so funny, dude, because I remember reading an article because you had been in Philly and they asked you what's next. I don't even know if you remember this. And you said, I'm going to host a radio show with a guy named Mickey Ryan. And it's funny because at the time I thought
that is funny. That is funny. That is funny.
I thought at the time, man, is there another Mickey Ryan? This is crazy.
Yeah.
And here you are. I'm glad you got to live.
But I will have to admit, and maybe Lucas's experience of being broadcasting, I feel like he knew what he wanted to do. Every birthday, starting when I was 5 years old, my birthday wish was, can I make the NFL? Hope I make the NFL. However I phrase it, every different time. It never changed throughout my entire life until I made it, Lucas. So what was yours? Because no one ever tells what their wish is if they make one.
Yeah, I didn't have a plan B behind this. Like, it was sink or swim.
Well, at that time, I didn't either. So, to be honest, that didn't happen until the maturation process. You get in college, you realize, oh, man, I'm not going to the league. And then they say, 15 teams are here to watch you. Oh, what? Well, y'all didn't tell me.
Right.
Well, why, you wouldn't play any different. So, so don't think your experience was any different than anybody else's.
My mom was the same, by the way. I wasn't allowed to do sports or anything. Theater, didn't matter what I wanted to do. Unless if I got anything below a C, nope.
Yeah, she took me off the choir team, but I was cool with that.
The choir
team. I could not sing. So your dream was to be in, radio, running the boards, broadcasting games, and
play-by-play and sports talk. Mm-hmm. Like I said, no plan B. Throughout college, it was like, all right, either this is happening or I'm not going to have a job.
See, and within my mind, that's just as important as what I dreamed that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. See, he got to do something that he always wanted to do, and I can say that I got to do 2 things I always wanted to do.
Mickey got to do several things.
Broadcasting was the other one, but I came up a little short there.
Here you are. I don't say that. It makes it
no, broadcast. This is not broadcast. This is radio. Broadcast is talking about on TV.
Okay.
And so I worked for the NFL
TV. Hey, everybody.
I did NFL Network, and then I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I like that. I don't know. That didn't work out. To be honest, growing up, as you can see me in many of the pictures that I post, I got numerous awards for speaking. I wanted to be the next Greg Gumbel. I got to meet him, or Brian Gumbel. Mm-hmm. I got to meet him at a steak and burger dinner where I was Boys Club Youth of the Year. And that was when I had my glasses on. I'm sitting there, and he's the keynote speaker sitting there and having conversation and dialogue. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. That's what I started thinking about outside of any of the sports. I wanted to broadcast. I had a unique talent. And I think that's what everybody must find out. What is your special talent that you were God-given to you, and then grow it? Grow it. You have to figure out what that is, but then grow it. And then now you've been sitting in the household of the B Bizzles and the Shizzles.
There you go. Life lessons from the Hitman. Some life lessons doled out by Arthur Smith. This is what we teased. They cut everybody who was the Titan except Marcus Mariota
and Rashawn Evans. They
didn't cut Rashawn Evans yet.
I have not seen that he's been cut.
They cut Pruitt?
Pruitt cut. Cam Batson, the wild bat, cut. Anthony Ferguson, cut.
Gone.
Cast out onto the ocean.
Bo Brinkley's still there.
Oh, the long snapper still hanging around?
Yeah, the long snapper and Mariota.
And Rashawn Evans.
Okay, so they shot 3 of the 6. Okay.
Imagine all them 3 start. So they wasn't going down that road.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll all start.
Yeah.
Pruitt,
You said all of the Atlanta Titans.
Okay, half the
Half the
Titans.
Titans.
I embellished a
Half
little
the
bit.
Atlanta Titans cover.
I don't dislike Pruitt as a player. He is, I mean, if he's like your number 3 tight end, that's a good tight end.
Maybe number 4.
Maybe number 4.
Which goes back to what I said earlier. Do you keep a 4th tight end instead of a 6th receiver?
And you know he knows the system.
Pruitt or Hudson.
Ooh. Or Ferkser. Is that boat already sailed?
Yeah, probably. I
That
imagine
boat
that's
is
over.
sailed.
But if they keep him in his lane and he's that 3rd or 4th guy,
As a
he will excel.
As a
They
possession
try to,
receiver.
They try to
Yeah.
make him the guy.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, I don't think he can be the guy. And people were trying to believe that he could be the guy. Oh, he had the same stats as Jonnu Smith.
Oh, and
He is not Jonnu Smith. Did you see that one-hand catch that he made against the Ravens in the playoffs? He jumped up there. Shoot, man, in my heyday, I couldn't have got that ball.
Man, it was getting the ball out of the backfield in the I
He
formation.
was playing running back? No, he's not that guy.
We do have some Titans news as we go to break because Coach
Uh-oh.
Mack is going to join us
we
next.
get some news? We get some cuts?
Well, it's the guy that we all said if they cut somebody that you know it could be Laurel Murchison, and it was Laurel Murchison.
Oh, man,
Aaron
I'm not
Wilson.
I'm not shocked at
Aaron
all.
Wilson of Houston. He's with Pro Football 365, I think now, not the Chronicle anymore. But Aaron Wilson reporting that Laurel Murchison cut loose. He says per league sources. I don't need league sources to know this. Coach Mack will join us next. We'll get the Mack attack on Blaine and Mickey. Blaine and Mickey 1045 The Zone. You hear that music, it only means one thing. It means the return of Coach Mack, who joins us for his weekly visit. Coach Mack, how in the world are you doing today? How's the world treating you?
Good, Mickey. Good, Blaine. Just very busy. We got a lot of stuff going on, starting with, this being the initial cut day. But we're going down Thursday. We're taking Titans OTP on the road Thursday to Memphis for 901 days down there. Mackenzie Scott and her group up there at the Titans have got a couple of big days planned. Rhett's going down early to do a school show with T-Rack. I think Mike, Keith, and Rhett are going to go to Cumulus there in Memphis. Amy Wells and I are driving down. We're going to do the OTP. We're driving down with Amy Wells' daughter Olivia, her first road trip for the OTP. So anyway, we've got some busy stuff going on there, and then we're getting ready for the season. I've already started looking at a lot of Giant stuff. Got 2 Microsoft things to produce with Ashley Farrell. Got to get Mack Talk ready. They'll be on Tuesday nights live at 6:00 during the season. So here we go.
Man, that's a lot of Coach Mack stuff that you'll be doing. I wanted to ask you this, though, to start off today. 2 things. One will just be about what this day is like as a coach, administrator, because you give some guys great news and you give some guys not so great news. But before I ask you that, a long time, just fantastic NFL coach lifer Ernie Zampese passed away. And I'm always curious to get your thoughts when some of these guys leave us, just because your tenure in the NFL has been so long. You actually had personal relationships with a lot of these people that the rest of us just saw on TV and knew about.
Guys knew Ernie very well. Of course, his son's coaching in the league now, but Ernie, was very instrumental there, with Coryell and the Cardinals, and then with the Cowboys.
Sure.
And of course, Ernie Zampese is the one. That's where North Turner got all of his things from. I knew Ernie very well. I mean, he was an icon in this business on the offensive side of the ball. Very innovative. When I was coaching in college at the University of Missouri, we'd go to up there to Coryell's cardiac cars to watch their practices at Lindenwood College, and there's a lot of guys that are really icons now in the National Football League. That I think Ernie was 86 or 87 years old, but just a brilliant offensive mind.
Sure was. Wanted to for sure get your thoughts on him. All right, now the other thing I wanted to lead off with, Coach. This is you play your final preseason game, you finish all your evaluations, you have all your meetings, then you start having to call guys. And I imagine it's tough because one guy comes in and you go, hey, you did it, you made the team, and you got all this excitement, and this guy's going to call his family. Then the next guy comes in and you got to have a different conversation. What in the world are these 24, 48 hours or so like for you when you were one of those guys that had to deliver the news?
Well, first of all, I always talk to every one of my players individually, whether I was a position coach, and then when I was a coordinator, talk to all the defensive players, that were released. And then when I was a head coach, talk to everybody because, look, these guys have poured everything into it, since they've been with you, during the off season. And so everybody deserves that respect when you talk to them. Now, as you said, there's different messages that you deliver. And, nowadays what's going on, and I really like what's going on because, first of all, with the expanded practice squad, you may not make this initial 53, but you've got a chance to either come back to your team or to go somewhere else. 16 is quite a good number on a practice squad. And then also keep in mind this, because I've talked to other people in these 2 alternate leagues. These spring leagues are going to be going on next year. There were 24 players, that came in out of the USFL last year to training camps. And now you're going to have the XFL and the USFL running, back to back. XFL will start and they get finished, and then the USFL will continue for year 2. There's a lot of opportunity to continue, even if you don't make this first or second or even third run at the NFL. The numbers that make it in the NFL are very, very small. People just don't realize and sometimes don't appreciate what it takes to not only make it, but to stick in the NFL. But there are different messages you deliver to different guys, but the thing that you don't do differently, everybody deserves that personal time, and they all deserve that personal respect because they put a lot into it to get to this point.
Sure have. Coach Mack joins us each week, courtesy of our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Look to the folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans when you need someone who knows the health care coverage plan. They've been protecting Tennesseans for 75 years.
Well, Coach, my bad. Kind of take us through just through what it's like cutting a legend, and I'm referring to Brett Kern and how that process is like, even when you're having the conversation and dialogue. Take us behind the curtain in the meeting room when a guy's still producing, but you have a young guy that you just can't walk away from. And you reduce salary, and he could be the next 15-year punter or whatever position it is. How difficult is those, and how do those conversations happen? And then how do you have to go through, like, how does that affect you emotionally, because all good things come to an end, and it's always tough. And who was a player like that for you, if you ever had a player that you had to cut that was kind of in that legend range for his particular team?
Well, yes, I mean, yeah, and that goes into one of those different conversation categories that I talked about. I mean, it's completely different, with a guy like Brett Kern than it is with a first or second year player that is just even getting started. I mean, Brett Kern is is an icon here as a punter. I mean, for as long as he's been here and what he's done for this franchise. I was here when we brought Brett Kern in here when I was still coaching here, and the reason we did, I mean,
isn't that crazy, Coach? Though that he's played for every coach in Titans history. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, here's what wasn't so crazy, because he could really do a lot of things.
Yeah,
right.
And the thing was, I remember when Denver cut him, they said, Josh McDaniel was the head coach. Then they cut him because they said, he couldn't place the ball. Well, wrong again. But what happens is,
that happens.
is you've got to give guys, a chance. And then he came in here and made the most of it, and became, really became a pillar of this football team. And I left and went to the Rams, but the Titans went through some rough times there for a while. And Brett Kern was one of those pillars that really kind of kept it going. So yes. Yeah, I mean, your conversation with those guys is completely different, and it's all from the respect level. But here's the thing: in dealing with those kind of guys, they know the business, they understand, and they understand and they know the business. And plus, in this day and age, look, what do we have? Andy Lee out there punting for the Cardinals this last preseason game. What's he? 40, 41 years old. I mean, these kickers, they orbit in a different universe. And so I think probably Brett Kern, if he wants to continue going, may have another chance to. But when you make those decisions, you're making it. You make every decision that you make when you're as a head coach and as a general manager for the good of your football team. At now, and also you got to look to the future. And I tell you what else always comes into play is where you are salary cap wise, where you are, your ability to balance out contracts. Throughout the contract, and not only looking at today, but looking a year and two in advance. All of those things have to come into being. But with a guy like Brett Kern, you have nothing but respect for him, and I think that's why they did it the first day too, because that to me was very respectful too. It's saying you're not just going to be lumped in with a bunch of 700 guys that are leaving. We want to let you know right now, and take a special moment to recognize you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Class act by the Titans there. One with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack. I guess, going back to the field, for me, I mean, how impressed were you with the maturation process in these 3 preseason games with the Malik Willis? Not to say he's arrived or anything like that, but he's better than when he started. And, man, that's just impressive that he's coachable and that he's trying to enact, a reactive type game into his game.
Yeah, Blaine, you've hit all the major points. And first of all, there was a reason that he lasted until the third round. Front offices weren't willing to say, how can we develop this guy? How quick can we develop this guy? He needed to go somewhere where he didn't have to be the guy immediately, but he needed to go to a stable organization. He came to the perfect place. And I will say this about him. I'll say this about Pat O'Hara. I will say this about Todd Downing. I will say this about, and I will say this about Ryan Tannehill, Logan Woods. Everybody that helped him, he listened to everybody. And he was a sponge out there. I've been watching this kid since May, every day. Made it a point early on to introduce myself to him, tell him who I was, and then he's the first guy out at practice every day. He's out there every day. He comes out there by himself. He stretches, does the whole rubber band thing by himself, and then goes and starts working on things. And to me, the growth that we've seen, it's been an incremental growth. And you were very correct in saying there's still a lot of growth to go because he hasn't gone against real dudes yet. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But the fact that, the things that he needed to work on, I mean, Mike Vrabel was very pointed with him, after the Baltimore game. You got to quit escaping out of the back of the pocket. You got to stay in there, start learning to throw these guys open. Well, the next week he did a little better. Last week he did immensely better with that. Yep. Never escaped out of the back of the pocket once, stood in there, went through 3 reads, on a couple of those throws. And then when he started escaping and using his natural ability, which you never want to take away from him because it's special, he started escaping up in the A and the B gaps, but with a clear field of vision that he had the whole field. And, he's learned really quick that you escape to the perimeter in the National Football League, especially if you bail out the back and start working. First of all, they're gonna walk you down, and second of all, you're cutting off 2/3 of your field to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's learned a lot of things, and he will continue to learn. I've been very impressed. Just not what he's done physically out there, because I think we all knew he had physical ability. You could see it, but the way that he has applied himself. And, you always say you don't want repeat offenders, but you also want guys to pay attention to, this is what we need to work on. He worked on it, and then he made it work in a game.
No doubt about it. I guess lastly for me is how crazy is this little window here as a coach? Kind of take us behind the scenes and kind of talked us through what with the coaches and GMs and everybody, during your time when you were a head coach and a DC and the impact and everything and what's going on and how you're looking at other players. Are you looking at everybody cut, or are you just looking at some guys you were interested that were, college kids that were coming out that you wanted to bring as undrafted guys or were going to draft? Or are you looking at advanced? I mean, kind of just take us through all of that.
Well, your personnel department, you have people assigned. I mean, once the training camp start, or even before training camp, into OTAs, you have people assigned to different divisions and different teams, and they need to know those teams as well as they know their own. Okay, so they know it specifically who's lined up, how many tight ends they bring to camp, how many safeties, and then just as you said, you look at your college grades. Where do those collegiate grades fall? And the people that you were looking at to try to bring in as a free agent, maybe you didn't quite get them, but you still have an eye on them. You've got guys assigned specifically to give daily reports on these people as to what's going on. Then all of that information is funneled to the directors. Then all that information is funneled to the general manager. Then it's funneled to the head coach and the assistant coaches. But that's a process that goes on throughout training camp. It's meetings. I mean, you're constantly in meetings. It's not like all of a sudden you go, oh hell, there's 780 people released. I mean, that's not how that goes at all. And so you've got a constant handle on what's going on, and then you've got to balance it between the guys that you've developed. How do they balance up against the guys that are released? And then the other thing that happens with that is you go to claim somebody off waivers. Well, you're going to put them on the active roster. So there's a lot that goes into it. And so but it's an ongoing process. And as I said, that's where your grind comes in. Not only coaching your team, but then keeping up with all of that information daily. From basically OTAs on till now.
Well, with Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack.
Coach, the Titans did trade for some offensive line help. Dennis Daly. Just curious, do you remember scouting him out of college? Have you been able to look at him a little bit since they acquired him? They got him from Carolina.
Yeah, I have not looked at him. I know he plays in South Carolina. I have not looked at him, but we kind of had it in mind. I think that they were probably they were looking to do this, right? Because a little bit of like what they're doing at safety, they want somebody that's going to be able to swing in there that's got some NFL game experience. Okay, and then that's what you look for right now at this point. Is somebody that's got some NFL game experience that is still young enough that you can also develop within your system. And so I don't think that surprised anybody that they went after. And plus, guys, you understand. I know you guys understand this, but this is for our listeners. We talk about this claiming all the time off of waivers. Your claiming order is in the exact order that the draft is.
Right.
All right. So Jacksonville has first shot at anybody that's released. All right. Titans are down there, 24. The Titans are down there. So your chance of getting claim somebody off a waiver wire that most people want, you got to go through 20 plus other people before you get a shot at him. So that's why they made the trade for this guy.
I always like camp stories. Julius Chestnut's been a really nice story. He said they told me I'd have a chance to compete here, and he's come here and he's compete well. Another guy on the opposite side of the ball that I've really liked, and we've talked about him some today, is David Anini, Coach. He just always seems to be around the dang ball.
Well, Anini's a guy that's very, very interesting. You know, come from Houston, that's shown a real ability to be around the football, and he's a guy that's going to be, you know, right on that edge. Do you keep him, or do you put him through waivers and bring him back on your practice squad? To me, he's an ideal practice squad guy because he still needs to be developed. But he has shown some things in the preseason. And now, guys, when people are looking at preseason tape, believe me, they're as sophisticated as we are because they know he's been productive, but they also look at who he's been going up against, right?
Sure.
I mean, you see all of that. But, yeah, Anini is a guy. I will say this. Anini came in here and did everything he could to get noticed here, everything he could. Is it enough to be on the initial 53? I don't know yet. Possibly, but even if it's not, I would say it really has given him a great chance to be back here on a practice squad.
Getting the Mack attack from Coach Mack here on Blaine and Mickey.
Well, Coach, I don't know if you can go back through your recall, and you know most coaches have all kind of recall on players, and I don't know what year this is for him, but I'm gonna ask you about Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama that was released by the Raiders. Kind of, if you can go back through your scouting dialogue of him reports. I guess tell us what you thought about him because, man, I know, I would sure like to see him, a flyer for anybody really at tackle. Worst case scenario, what is he, a guard or he's a backup tackle, right?
Yeah, he's an interior guy, really. And you know, everybody was a little shocked. There were two picks, you know, during that time, with the Raiders that they made that kind of took everybody back a little bit, you know, early on in the first round. Cleveland Farrell out of Clemson's one. And then Leatherwood was the other one. I mean, didn't think that he would be a first-round pick. There was a lot of varying opinions on him coming out of Alabama. Clearly, he hasn't lived up to, look, expectations for number one draft picks sometimes are a little bit out of whack. And so, I haven't followed him, since he has been up there.
Right.
Clearly, there's something that they didn't like. Now, does that mean that he can't come and help somebody as a backup somewhere? Absolutely not. 31 other teams are always willing to kick the tires on somebody, especially. But you go back and you look at the grades that you had on him coming out, and then you compare that to the progress or non-progress that he's made since he's been in the league, and then you've got to weigh all those things. But again, played on a great team. But as I said, I can remember specifically just the kind of the thought process of a lot of other people, around the league that I talked to during that draft pick. They were going, wow, that might be a little high for him.
Mm-hmm. We just saw that Mason Kinsey and Joe Johnson were both
Jones.
Jones. I'm getting his name still right. I got the first name right today, but Joe Jones. What were your thoughts on those players, and are they hopefully potentially players that can be brought back if they're still available?
Well, yeah, I think so. Mason Kinsey's been a guy that's been around here quite a bit, and he's just, he's that guy again that's going to show up quite a bit, in the preseason ball games, kind of like what Andy Isabella did for the Cardinals, on Saturday. That guy that's going to be able to show up quite a bit, and then you just got to decide, does he have enough to make your roster initially? The answer clearly on this was no. Now, Joe Jones to me is an interesting guy. He's been on about 6 teams, but still, for what he did, I tell you, and I said it on the broadcast because I think it's important. That effort play that he made to walk Isabella down, and I mean, Andy Isabella's a 4.3 plus guy, and was walking away from everybody. But the effort that he made coming from the backside to run him down there, sometimes you've seen those. You've been in games like that, Blaine, where they may have an explosive play, but somebody makes a great touchdown-saving tackle and it ends up flipping it a little bit. And to me, I thought it was worth mentioning because that just shows he's doing everything he can to do something to stand out. He was a good special teams player, so I think he may have a chance to be back here if that's what they're thinking.
I guess how soon are you starting? I know you said you are, but how soon is the staff starting to the New York Giants players?
They've already been on it. They've already been on
Cool.
it. Yeah, Kevin Byard's been on. The players have been on it. They've already been on it. Now, the difference in the Giants this year, guys, of playing an opener like this,
new coach,
you've got the head coach and defense. The head coach is going to call the offense. The defensive coordinator is going to call the defense, clear. But they come from different teams, right? So what you're really going to be watching, you're going to be watching, and that's what I'm doing now for this Microsoft things that Ashley Farrell and I are getting ready to produce a couple of them. You're looking at Baltimore's defense and what Wink Martindale's going to do, which he's got some very specific things that he does that gives you problems, especially protection wise. And then you're looking at what Brian Dable did up there, with that offense, with a quarterback that's got a good arm and that can move around. You're looking at what he is going to try to do, and you expect him to spread things out. I expect Saquon Barkley to be used quite a bit in the passing game. So those are the things that you're looking at. You're really looking at those types of things because you can look at their preseason games, but they didn't play many of their dudes either. You know what I mean? But you can kind of get an idea maybe of what they've got. But it's been in my experience, guys, that new coaches and new coaching staff, they like to save a lot for that first game because nobody has a book on them yet.
Coach Mack, I know it's a busy day. Looking forward to seeing Mack talk and hearing it and all this other content you got coming out. You guys have a safe trip down to Memphis, and we'll talk to you next week.
Guys, always a pleasure being on with both of you. See you.
Yes, sir. The one and only Coach Mack. All right, when we come back, we'll get you updated on everything we know about Titans cuts. And as Blaine said, stuff is happening. Come on back.
Thanks for listening.
Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. News starting to drop everywhere now.
Uh-oh.
We're on
we
the air
haven't
talking.
got cut, have we?
We have not been cut. Blaine is still here. Lucas
we're
still
still doing Titans
here.
radio.
Still got Bird on the practice squad. I'm still here.
I like that.
So Aaron Wilson out of Houston had broken earlier.
Well,
Laurel-
hang on a sec. Hang on.
Oh, you need breaking news.
Breaking Titans news on 104.5 The Zone.
So Laurel Murchison.
Yeah, baby.
Laurel Murchison, we have to add that. Laurel Murchison cut loose today per Aaron Wilson out of Houston. Just a couple of minutes ago, Justin Mello with the news that Mason Kinsey was cut. People have been in the Zone TV chat asking about Mason Kinsey all afternoon. Terry McCormick with the news that the Heart and Hustle guy, Joe Jones, was going to be cut loose. Man, it's another one of those guys that, like, he just that's all.
Man,
he did everything he can do.
League, man.
So maybe, hey, I literally, we had the soundbite from him that I got from him on Saturday night. He said, I know that I'm auditioning for 31 other teams as well. So that's on tape for him. Maybe he will be soon on his 7th NFL team. This from Sam Phelan, who joined us yesterday from A to Z Sports. Des Fitzpatrick has now been cut twice by this team.
What?
Once in 2021 and once in 2022.
So they let some of these receivers go. Roberson as well?
Terry McCormick reporting that Reggie Roberson will be released by this team, the undrafted rookie out of SMU, who I think is a really, really interesting prospect. Reggie Roberson. And Blaine, you and I watched him practice one day, and he had a knee injury, but it sure seems like, what did Celine Dion say? It's all coming back to me. I think Reggie could be saying that about his speed and quickness, so maybe he lands on your practice
picked
squad.
up. Yeah, him and Kinsey, I thought, played almost as well as they could play, besides having, big-time plays in games. But in practice, they definitely had their moments for sure.
Sounding like 5 receivers.
Yeah.
It could be 5 receivers and 4 tight ends. Brought this up in the first hour of the program. I mean, does it just end with Racey McMath? Maybe you put in a waiver claim. Lucas, you were saying this in the break. A couple guys cut that sort of piqued some Titans fans' interest. Preston Williams, who started off great in Miami as a rookie and then got injured. He played 8 games in 3 years in Miami. But the other guy, Tyler Johnson, Bucks wide receiver, who we just got to look at, he caught a couple of passes against the Titans in the preseason game. A lot of people like him as well. They got every receiver in the world in Tampa.
You remember what number he was?
No, and I even looked and watched the video of him, and I don't remember what number he was.
I remember they had a little guy, 83. He was kind of
that's Tevin somebody, the little teeny dude, 83.
Dortch.
Was
Dortch.
Was that Dortch?
Johnson was 18 with the Bucks.
He's a bigger guy. He's like 6'1"-ish.
That receiver room is just so deep.
They got just dudes on top of dudes there. So I'm just scanning like crazy. I saw Mike Herndon had said Vrabel's offseason awards are officially dead to me. I hope Dez and Radens enjoyed the parking spots. This actually came up on the show a couple of weeks ago, and Dez's name came up, and they were like, but Blaine, he got the offseason award.
And what was my answer to that?
Dude, that doesn't mean anything. It did get him a parking spot.
No, I did say also, this is not college. So all that means nothing. You know what all that counts? Game. And especially for these guys now, with getting so much clock in game, that's what really matters the most. Now, practice, build up. You got to start showing some consistency that who you are, and then you go perform in the game. And that may only get you on the practice squad, depending on what position you are and how much, they already have some veterans that were already going to make the team. People, it's hard to make the NFL. It's tons of players coming out.
Yep.
And when we're talking about spots that day, I think, Lucas, you was part of this equation. We were talking about how many spots are available. No, it was Buck. We did it on the pregame show.
Yeah.
And I said 5. And Buck was said like 10 or so. No, I said, no.
How many even available spots on the team?
I want to go less, but, I'm going to go 5. Because Vrabel always has some undrafted guys that make the roster.
Yep.
So it was, I really value what he brings to the table in that you better earn it. And vets, young players, drafted players, because if not, I got these other guys. If he's outperforming you. That's it.
Looking to see if anybody else out there put out anything else on the Titans, but I don't see anything else. So here's what you do. Just stay tuned to 3HL from now until 6 o'clock, and they'll tell you everything that happens. But right now, it's time for us to go.
But before we go,
Yes.
it's just a yes or no. Dylan Radins makes the team.
Yeah, he's going to make it.
Yeah.
Surely. You can't flush a second rounder this early.
Yeah. Guard depth.
Remember,
He's guard depth.
remember, it is not over until it's over. I told y'all, you say this is the 53, then you come back the next day, clip one of the guys that brought somebody else in. So in the meantime,
It's over for us in between time.
peace.